Hi, I'm Nick Best and welcome to my top 10 most likely issues for the DreemPark case study. It was about 4 years ago now that I produced my first top 10 issues. That was for the old T4 exam. And I remember when the exam came along, having done this top 10 and produced the list, recorded the video, slightly in trepidation as to what was going to come up. I'd had 6 years of experience prior to that in teaching for the final level case study, and I'd been the final T4 official case study study text writer and worked with the examiner on that. But despite that, I'd never tried to predict what would come up in the exam. And I did it for this one sitting. I thought, okay, I think students are interested in this. Let's do this for them. And lo and behold, the top 4 issues came up in that exam. My top 4 issues came up in that exam. In fact, I was so worried then because there were 2 variants. One was sat in September, the other one was sat in November. And I was worried, well, what on earth is going to come up in the exam in November? But in actual fact, even the November exam very closely linked through to that top 10. And so ever since then, we've been producing top 10 issues lists for all of the case studies, and by and large, they are pretty accurate. Now, I can't promise you the top 4 issues here are going to be what your exam is based on. In fact, since the strategic case studies come along, what we've seen is that probably around about half of the issues that come up in any particular variant reflect what was in our top 10, and then there'll be some other things that come up that won't be anywhere in this top 10. They'll just be new issues that you'll have to deal with there and then. There was no hint in the pre-seen. We couldn't have predicted it in any way. So that's what we see. But the way I feel actually is, well, if half of your issues that come up on the day, you've really thought about them, you've planned them, you've prepared them, you've perhaps looked at my analysis and that's helped to guide you in terms of what you think is likely to come up, then you're going to be in a better position. But also let me warn you, I had a student about, what would it be, about 4 or 5 months ago now. It was the week before the exam. So we looked literally, I think it was about 3 or 4 days before the first sitting, and he emailed me and he said, Nick, I'm thinking of buying your top 10 issues. I've not done much work yet. Is that going to be enough to get me through the exam? And I just felt, oh, my heart sank at that point. This is going to be very useful to guide you and support you, but in no way is this top 10 going to be enough to get you through the exam. I don't want to put the top 10 down, but you must remember that these top 10 are a guide. They may come up, they may not come up. As I said, we've had a good record in the past. But also, what comes up on the day of the exam will be a change in focus. Okay? So my number 10 issue, just for example here, is staff union strike issue. Okay, but we don't exactly know how that will get examined, should that get examined. Okay, and you have to look at what's the information on the case as to exactly what the staff problems are that might be causing an issue for the unions to come out. Is it something to do with health and safety? Is it a pay issue? You know, there's a whole different range of issues. So while you can prepare for an issue, you do have to be very, very well prepared to deal with the specific issue that comes up on the day of the exam and adapt your answers accordingly. Okay, so let me, so don't do what that student does and think that this is going to get you through the exam. Certainly it's not going to get you through the exam, but it is a big support because you can prepare effectively if you know what's more likely to come up. Okay, so how have I made my choice then? Well, the first thing is the focus in the pre-seen. Okay, it's the amount of space devoted to the issue, but it's also that combined with my experience. So, for instance, that top 10 issue that I've just said to do with staff and unions, okay? Well, it's just the fact that there was that one statement in the pre-seen that said, oh, and staff are unionised. And that just rang alarm bells to me. I just used my past experience and realised, well, where we've had unionised businesses in the past, that's very commonly in one of the variants. The reason is, of course, is that, well, actually the reason is it gives the staff power. Power they wouldn't have if they were just individuals. So they can exercise that power as a result of that. So, yeah, lots of past exam questions on that. But combined with just that hint or that little element, the examiner didn't have to put that in. So why decide to put that in? Well, probably because it's a thought that that might be somewhere, there might be some issue on that. Okay. The strategic importance comes into it as well. What are the big issues for this case? The more strategically important they are, the higher I'll put them up my list as well. Also, just little things like, I mean, I've spent hours, weeks and weeks actually over the last 10 years writing mock exams for this paper, and so I know what it's like in terms of writing exam issues. What are easy things to write issues on, what are harder things to write issues on, and so just kind of what are the typical things that come up. Also, given this pre-seen, what are the kind of things that I would write issues on, because actually it's more likely then that the examiner and the examiner's team are going to be writing issues on those things too. So I've got that then. I'm also going to help guide you in terms of how you prepare for those issues. So for each issue I'm going to say, look, here are some key models that you could use. And given those key models, you can then, let's say the union issue came up and I've guided you as to which models to use. You can just think, okay, here is a union issue. Nick said I could use this model, or I could maybe use that model. Yeah, that is appropriate. You still need to ask yourself the question, is that appropriate given what comes up, given the way it's been asked? But more than likely it will be. And then you can use that model to support you in terms of the way you answer. And remember, the best answers, use the models to support the answer. You do not go around describing the models, remember, but you use them to support the answer. Okay. You can practice mock exams with those issues in there. Of course, we do aim that our mocks have a combination of the top 10 issues with some new ones as well, so that we've got that balance between what's in that top 10, but also when you're practicing, we need to throw a whole range of different things so you're prepared for the unexpected. Okay, so the next way the top 10 is useful is to help you find real-life industry examples. Now, again, you don't have to score get real-life examples to pass this exam, but you do score marks if you put good ones in and you use them appropriately. So my view is, well, let's get those industry examples and use them, because they could be the difference between you passing and failing. So what industry example should you look for? Well, actually, if you're looking for those that relate most closely to the issues in the pre-seen, and actually that's going to relate very closely to my top 10 issues, then you are getting the right types of issues. So focusing your answer on that, very important. Of course, in our industry pack, we provide 25 examples which we're going to focus very much around these top 10 issues. So hopefully they are going to be appropriate for you to use in the exam. But I also think that in addition to those, it's important you do your own industry research. So researching around these top 10 issues, I think, is something useful for you. Do learn some sample exam paragraphs then, some paragraphs that are going to be useful to you to use in the exam based on those industry examples. Okay, learn those and use those in the exam. You can learn typical points. So for instance, there may be, we'll see in just a moment with our strike issue, that there are some specific issues that if there were a strike or possible strike action threatened, that you can actually learn in advance to help you to deal with that should that come up. Okay, so be prepared for the models. Yeah, we've talked about that already, haven't we? So let's look at this top 10 issue then. The issue number 10, we'll count them down from the least important, which is my issue 10, to the most important, which is my issue number 1. And my issue 10 then is a possible issue in relation to staff, with a focus on the union and maybe potentially threat of strike action. Quite often when you see union issues in the exam, there's some threat of strike going on, because that's how they exert their power. So, as I've already mentioned then, why am I choosing this? Well, first thing is this is a common issue in the past exams. Whenever there have been unions, there's very often a variant that's got the unions exerting power, or the unions not being happy about something. And when they're not happy, usually there's the threat of strike action in there at the end. So that can be very important. If that does happen, that could have a huge impact on the business, which we'll go into in a moment. So it does become of strategic importance. Now, one thing that's also critical is that 50% of the marks on the exam are for either people skills or leadership skills. this is something that people very often miss in their preparation for the case study, is that they are expecting lots of technical P3, F3 type questions, and they're just missing that 25% of the questions are people-based questions, questions about staff and customers and ethics and things along those lines. Another 25% is about leadership, it's about change management, it's about making strategic decisions. And so you've got this big proportion of the case studies and case study questions that are people focused. So therefore I feel quite safe having staff union type issues in my top 10 because I know that staffing issues are so common in this exam. Then you have to look at, well, actually in the pre-seen, staff are largely quite content. So, that brings down the likelihood of it being a big issue, but I still think it does need to be in my top 10. So the fact that we've got unions mentioned it's just so much a possibility that it's definitely something for us to include. So if this does come up, then what are the most likely issues? Well, I think that the most likely issue is that there's some health and safety issue with staff. These are huge pieces of equipment, actually, that are being dealt with by staff. Particularly I'm thinking of things like roller coasters, but even some of the smaller rides are going to be using equipment that could potentially be unsafe. Even people that are just operating within the cafes and restaurants, big health and safety issues in those environments. So this is a big opportunity for the examiner to bring up about health and safety in relation particularly to staff. Also, for there to have been some problem or issue, then the union has said to them around saying, no, we don't think it's safe for our staff. We're going to go out on strike unless something is done about that. Of course, whenever there's unions, there's always potential for the union asking for pay rises, so that's definitely something to consider. Could be a redundancy program. I think we have to ask ourselves the question, which is, well, why do costs appear so high in the Middle East? And we will talk about that. We talked about that in my pre-seen video series so far. We'll talk about that later on in this series as well. But it could be we end up with some kind of efficiency program, some kind of cost-cutting program, perhaps some new technology come in that means there's fewer staff that are required to manage the rise or something along those lines. And so any of those issues then could end up with the threat of strike action linking through to that strike element. So should this come up in the exam then, what are the key points that you should be raising? Well, reasons to avoid any kind of strike. This is very important. By and large, we need to avoid the staff being unhappy. We want to keep them content. We want to avoid unions being unhappy. And therefore, well, what are the reasons we should avoid that? Why do we want that? Well, the first is just lost revenues during that strike period. If they were out for a couple of weeks, that would be millions and millions of pounds lost, particularly during the peak season. And so we definitely want that to be avoided. We do not want staff to be unmotivated. If there's health and safety problems, lack of pay, staff are unhappy about something, then we want to make sure that the staff are content. It means that they work efficiently and effectively, that there's good team working, that they're bought into the business, that we have fewer people leaving, the staff turnover is low. So that could be caused by any staffing issue. And in addition, if there was a strike and after it ended, there would be a lot of conflict going on that wouldn't make people very happy to be working there anymore. It's also bad for publicity. If the park was shut for some reason, that could end up affecting the reputation of the business, which is very important too. Social responsibility is key to this business too, so therefore we definitely, given that the CSR is very important, we want to avoid this. There's the impact on the brand, links through to bad publicity, of course, going forward long term. So look, lots of reasons to avoid this, but you don't ever want to give in too easily, because you have the duty of your shareholders, duty of care to your shareholders. You have the shareholders to look after, and therefore you've also got to deliver strong profits. And the shareholders will want, yes, staff to be happy, but at the lowest possible pay rate, so therefore we can balance the profits with contented staff. if there is a reason for staff changing, like there's some kind of change, like there's a redundancy program, very often that change is necessary, and we can't just give in and just say, okay, you're going to go on strike, or you're going to threaten something, and we're going to give in to you every time. Okay, so there is an element of standing firm, because at times change is necessary in businesses. I mean, arguably, if a part of the business is loss-making, maybe it's the Middle Eastern part of the business, well, either we save costs there, or we can't keep on running that part of the business. And so therefore there's justification for cutting staff, for keeping costs down, in order to keep the business profitable, in order to make sure that everyone doesn't lose their job. So that's a kind of counter-argument to the unions. So some useful points there, positive and negative. Now in the exam, when an issue comes up, your goal is to give the positives, the reasons to avoid it, give the negatives, the reasons not to give in too easily, and you'll get marks for each of those points. A paragraph on each of those points will be getting you marks. And then at the end you'll make your conclusion as to which way you want to go. Finally, should there be an issue with the unions, always aim to resolve your disputes through some kind of negotiation. Your goal is always a fair balance point. Don't go saying, no, we definitely don't give in, or, oh, we'll just give in too easily. Say, look, we were trying to negotiate a reasonable position, and also find the balance point. If they are wanting more money, perhaps there's other things that could be negotiated on, like working hours, maybe not working so many weekends, or not having compulsory weekends, or something along those lines. There's often other things you can build into a negotiation other than just money too, so do consider that too. Okay, so what theory can you use then? Well, any kind of change management. My favourite model is Lewin's unfreeze, move, refreeze model. So this can be particularly useful if we're trying to bring in some kind of new procedures, new policies. Redundancies could come into this as well. So that could be a good one to use there. But definitely the one that you can use every time is Mendelow's matrix. Now the union are a key player. A key player is a stakeholder who has high power and high interest. Certainly they've got high interest to look after their members, and high power because actually if the staff went out on strike, then that could have a big impact on this business. Therefore we must involve them in decision making and make sure that we keep the union happy and we listen to their demands, not just demands, but just listen to what staff are saying through the union in order to make sure that the unions are kept happy. Secondly, we've got our shareholders. The shareholders are in the keep satisfied box of Mendelow's matrix, particularly the large institutions. They've got power, but very often they don't exercise that power. They're not that interested on a day-to-day basis. And so therefore they do want to have increased profits. And actually this is where the balance comes, is doing what's right for shareholders, keeping wages low, and doing what's right for the staff, which is to pay high wages, and getting that balance is always the challenging point. So you can put those two people into Mendelow's matrix, say how that means that we need to treat them in relation to that particular issue. Okay, and if you're watching the free version of this on the website or on YouTube, I hope you found the first part of this useful. Of course, from this, I hope that you will go on and buy the rest of this video. The video itself goes on for an hour and 20 minutes, and I go through each of the other 9 issues and I guide people in terms of what to do. You've seen how I've done one of them, so you get the idea what it will be like. Do watch our other 2 free videos as well, by the way. The strategic analysis video, you get the free sample of that, but also the first video of the whole Pre-seen series. You've got that as well. So hopefully amongst that, even just the free stuff that we give can be a great help to you. You can of course go through and create your own top 10 issues list, or of course go through and see mine. I hope you'll do the latter, but of course you can do your own and then work on preparing based on your own top issues. But use the Pre-seen to help guide you in terms of what you think is likely to come up. Of course as well, we also have mock exams. We have a course that's available with all of our material, and there's no doubt that it's the people that come on the course that actually do every part of the course. Those people we're so confident we'll get through, we give a pass guarantee, and actually if they do fail, there's no charge next time around. If they fail again, there's no charge again, as long as they keep on taking the full course all the way through. The reality is those people that take the full course, they have all their mocks done, they get them all marked, they learn from their feedback, they complete the sheets that we ask them to do in terms of showing what they've learned from each of the things. They attend the masterclass, they do the course videos, they basically do everything that's on the course. Those are the people that are in a very, very good position, and I hope you all think that's worth coming on the course. But if not, of course, you can buy each of the elements of those of the material on the course as a one-off purchase. You can just buy individual mocks, just one mock or something like that. It's definitely worth your while investing in the material to help you prepare. So I hope you'll find that useful. I hope you'll join our course, but if not, then I wish you the best of luck in your exams going forward.